If you want to write a book and become a best-selling author, you're in the right place. At Elite Online Publishing, we can help you create, publish, and market your book so that it becomes a #1 bestseller. We work with a limited number of authors to ensure that they receive the best possible service. So if you want to learn how to write and publish a book that will empower you to smartly grow your brand, business, and credibility, apply today. We look forward to working with you.
Great podcast today. I'm Melanie Johnson, your host, owner of Elite Online Publishing, where we make our authors bestsellers and publish and market your book. So today, of course, we talk everything publishing here at the Elite Publishing Podcast. And one of the most important things when you're an author, people say, well, how do I get out there? How do I get speaking gigs? How do I get media? Well, guess what? We have an expert that's been doing this for a long time. She knows more than most people you'd ever dream about. She's been doing this for the last 15 years. She's run relations, radio podcast tours, and helped hundreds of filmmakers and authors and leaders grow their business and sell more books, right? That's the important part, to create viewership and change lives. And she introduced them to over 9,000 radio shows and podcasts. That's huge. So Jackie is here with us today, and we're going to get a lot out of this. It's going to be meaty, it's going to be juicy, and it's going to be fun. Jackie and I had known each other for about 5 or 6 years now, right, Jackie?
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about your background. How and heck did you even get into promoting authors on radio and podcasts?
Well, you have to go back a lot further than that. I was one of the first women sports writers in America at the Detroit Free Press and the Associated Press and the LA Times and the Washington Post. And from there, I launched the one of the 2 largest sports PR agencies in America. And for 20 years, I had a world-class client list. And I mean, you would know all my clients. And in those years, we got massive publicity on all the major outlets for the clients that we worked with. So I really learned my craft under a baptism of fire and learned how to get the word out on clients. The industry changed. The big agencies were coming in on top of us, smaller agencies. And then the social media was kind of starting to take over, and it wasn't quite kind of my thing at that point. I was more of a traditionalist, but I was called at the same time to write 2 books in personal growth. One was the best spiritual book of the year at the International New Age Trade Show, Practical Conscious Creation, Daily Techniques to Manifest Your Desires. And it really did wonderfully well. But here was the really key to that. At the time, then publicists were really just doing, broadcast radio. I realized there was this whole new area of internet radio that people were not paying attention to. So I paid a bunch of people to go and data mine that area. I built a list of 750 radio shows and podcasts just for me to promote my books. And I did over 100 interviews. And when I got done with that, I realized that my heart lay with the people who were making the world a better place. This was what I wanted to be doing going forward. So I rebranded my company, Conscious Media Relations, and started doing radio podcast tours to introduce them to the audiences that are, have really proliferated during the years that podcasts is also piled on. 4.2 million podcasts on top of the others. So we've continued to grow our list, as you just mentioned, 9,000. And so that's where my joy is in people who are making the world a better place through personal growth, spirituality, health and wellness, memoirs with a message, anything that improves one's life, one's business, or the planet. And so that's where we got to where we are now. And we've been doing that for 15 years. And I'm really excited. A lot of our clients include a lot of the luminaries you might know. Don Miguel Ruiz, Ariel Ford, James Twyman, Joe Vitale, Chris and Jed Atwood, Maureen St. Germain, Noah St. John, and on. And lots of first-time authors.
Awesome. So impressive. So impressive. And, I feel you. When we started our podcast, the Elite Expert Insider podcast, when we incorporated 10 years ago, and most people 10 years ago didn't even know what a podcast was. What's a podcast? We'd ask people, can you be on our podcast? What's a podcast? I had to explain it to PR agencies at the time. And, you had said something, this is like a side note, this would be a green room thing, but I didn't realize you worked at the Free Press, Detroit News, and were in the Detroit area. So my first job in broadcasting was at WXON in Detroit, TV 20. So I was there in 1987 And then I had become Miss Michigan after I got the job there. So I had to juggle both being Miss Michigan and at WXON. So I'm sure I grew up in Michigan, so I'm sure we knew some of the same people in the media industry and newspaper industry and all of that and sports. So that's a small world, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So tell us, why is it important for someone to write a book in the first place? What did writing those books for you do for you on a personal level? I know some people, I tell them just by writing the book, it's cathartic and you feel like you go through a wormhole and reach another level personally. But then also, what does it do for you on a business front?
So there are people write books for different reasons, as you well know. One of
Mm-hmm.
them is they have a message inside of them that they really have to get out. And
Mm-hmm.
that was my purpose at the time. The other purpose is I have a business and I need a book that is going to be my entree into all the doors. That's
Yeah.
going to be the first thing a way that a client or prospective client is going to encounter me. So
Mm-hmm.
in my case, at that point, I was really just trying to get the message out. That was what was important to me. I felt that was part of the mission that I was brought here to do.
Yeah.
Then, obviously for me, it was the gateway to opening my next business. I say I follow God's breadcrumbs. But for most people who are doing this, who are driving a business, a book is a critical tool. It gives you credibility. It opens doors. You're going to get more interviews on podcasts and other media if you have a book, bar none. That is, no matter what your story is, it's going to be more advantageous to have a book. It's to enable you to get more speaking gigs. It's going to enable you to, divide up that content and deliver it in all different ways and utilize it for social media and for promotion and excerpts and ways that you can drop it onto people's websites when they invite you to commit. A book is for me, it's the gateway. It's a gateway to driving your business. And I believe that, and I've seen this in all the work that we've done with our clients, that you have to actually take advantage of your media by doing three things every time you get interviewed. The
Mm-hmm.
first is promote your book. The
Mm-hmm.
second is drop a freebie that people are going to take advantage of, that are going to get on your list because they may not buy your book the first. And the third thing is tell them where you want them to go next. What is the call to action that you're going to be offering? Whether that's a e-course, a private consultation, a coaching program, whatever it is that you're driving your clients to, you need to be promoting all three of those things when you get interviewed. Otherwise, you're kind of throwing away part of that value of that extra time that you're getting, especially since the interviews used to be 5 and 10 minutes on broadcast. They are now an hour or more, half an hour to an hour, largely on podcasts. And keep in mind, podcasts today, like this, are videos as well as audios. People will often see you as well as hear you. So it's, a lot of times you're getting two hits for the price of one.
And that, boy, you just laid down such great gems and great takeaways there. I want to have a quote of this. Your book is the gateway to successful business. It's a gateway to making your business really explode. And the three things that you should do when you're on a podcast, if you don't have a book, right, then you can't promote it. And I find so much from PR agencies or from speaker bureaus, if you don't have a book, they don't want to sign you up. So you have to have the book. And like you say, it makes your job easier. If someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to do a media tour, get me on radio and get me on podcast, I bet one of the first questions you ask is, do you have a book?
You are dead right.
And then you tell them, well, if you don't have a book, then you need come back to me when you have a book, or I'll see what I can do, but it's not going to be near as wonderful as it would be if you did have a book.
Well, and
Right.
usually we'll take the people that don't have a book, but you're absolutely
Hmm.
right. I tell them we're going to lose 10%.
Right.
10% of those hosts
Exactly.
are going to say no book, no interview.
Yeah. So it's like it makes your job harder and they're not going to get as much bang for their buck, so to speak, because they're spending the same amount of time going through the process and they don't have the book to do it. And they don't have a back end of sales, right? That book is that first little nugget that someone can buy from you to put their foot in the door. Go, I like what they're saying. Their product seems really good. It's a lot of money. It seems like, whether they're selling a $10,000, $5,000, whatever their thing is, but I could get their book for $10 and see if I like them, listen to their audiobook or whatever it might be. So I think that is such great advice, and especially about the video. So, we've done podcasts, like I said, for 10 years. And so many times people come on here and they are not video ready. We've even had to tell people, listen, we're going to have to cancel your interview because you're like sitting in a public bathroom or something and trying to do this interview. We just did one last month. I canceled one. I said, listen, obviously you're not ready. They wanted to do it. They were in a car. And I'm like, no, we're not doing it while you're driving in a car. This is, we have a certain quality to do. Get back on our schedule when you're ready to be in a quiet place, have a nice background and good lighting and good audio. So I think that's part of the other part is be prepared for the opportunity. Have those things, have that freebie, have that next step for them to do. That's great advice. What other advice do you give someone when they're searching that PR from you and come to you?
Well, the most important next step is the media kit. We do that as part of our tours. But if you're going to do your own podcasting, you also have to have a media kit. Now, you don't send this media kit to get the interview. You send a pitch. But to when you get booked, then you have to have the media kit. The media kit has a variety of things. It's a main release on what the subject matter of the interview is going to be. We repurpose our pitch as the main release. Then a full bio on you, because you want the host to really know who you are. You want them to understand not just a 2-paragraph bio, but how you got to where you are and what your full expertise is. Then the next thing you want to give them is an on-air introduction that the host reads when you come on. Do not leave it to the host. They will mess it up. And the next thing is 20 questions that you want to be asked in the order you want to be asked them. Now, let me tell you why you want to do this. 1, it's a roadmap. First of all, 80% of the hosts are going to use your questions. And this is going to allow you to basically direct the interview and get the content in that you want to get and the call to actions, incorporating your freebie, incorporating, what your coaching program or whatever it is. But you got to fill it with content, valued content that, the host is going to want to give that audience, but then you can integrate these other things. Now, here's another benefit to the 20 questions. If you haven't yet started speaking and you're a little intimidated by this, by the time that you do answer these questions 20 times, giving much the same sound bites 30 times, 40 times, it's usually very much a lot of the same content that's going to go in your speech. So when you then get to go out onto a stage, you're going to have your content nailed. This is exactly what happened to me when I did those 100 interviews. By the time I got to stage, I was so confident. I had my stuff down. I knew what order that I was going to deliver it without having to look at a cheat sheet, because I delivered it so many times on a podcast. And then to the last page of the media kit is what we call the Learn More page. And that is how the public can engage with you in bullet point. So it's how to find and get your book. What is your website? What is your social media? Where can they get a hold of your freebie? Where can they get a hold of your upsells and what they are? What's the link to that? So all of it's encapsulated on that last page. So a full media kit is going to make the host far more educated and more able to help you market what you're trying to market, whether it's just a book or whether it is something else in your plan. So that, to me, is a key to making sure that you have a solid PR campaign.
And would you say to put that media kit on your website, like to book you to speak? Like if someone wants, like I tell our authors they should have an author website, or if it's their business website, but they should have a place where they have their speaking information, the things that they want for speaking, whether it's AV equipment or certain things that they require in the inquiry. But should they list their media kit? Should that be on there, or should you just put like a request for the media kit?
Well, on your speaker pick speaker one sheet, which is basically just a summary of your expertise and what you speak on and a couple of testimonials,
Okay.
So I recommend that on your speaker page. But if you want
Okay.
to include your media kit on your publicity page or your bio or your About Us page, then that's a good thing to include there as well.
Okay. So do put it on your website somewhere. Okay.
Yes, you
Okay.
can. I mean, most important is that you physically, digitally supply it to the host. When we do our media tours, we create a Google folder with the media
Uh-huh.
kit, the photo of the client, a digital copy of their book, and any other aids so that the host
Mm.
can just grab it all at the same time.
And then how important is it for them to incorporate stories? Like we say when you write a book, you should be putting personal stories in there. That's what connects people to them. And we always say, hey, your book is your speech is your book. And I love that you're saying, well, it's the interview too becomes your speech. But I'm thinking even those 20 questions, if you're an author, it's easy to pull those 20 questions out of your book, out of the content. So your book, you take the content from the book that can transcend part of it into your media kit about the questions and some other information. And then that turns into your speech. But so back to that question, is it important to, why they're doing these interviews, to incorporate personal stories, not just give out data and answers to the questions? You know what I
Well,
mean?
we always recommend that question number one is, how did you get here?
Mm-hmm.
Your story about how you got to this place. And then
Yeah.
probably the next one is, why did you write this book? And both of those are opportunities for stories. And then you can get into the content.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. How long does it take to get booked? I mean, a lot of people are like, great, okay, I'm going to hire your service or another service. And, and then what is the process from starting to actually getting on somebody's podcast? And usually how many do you get them booked on?
So when we do it, there's usually about 3 weeks or a month during which time I read your book, write your pitch, write your media kit. And then we pick a day and we send on that day to 9,000. And
Wow.
generally, we guarantee 30 interviews. We always know
Okay.
we can hit those 30. And depending on the subject matter, they either come back right away and fill almost the entire calendar in the first couple of days. It's a slow ad. And so, you're going to see on that very first day anywhere from 4 to 20 responses saying, I either want this yes, or I want to send me the book first. And so, there can be an immediate response to that. And
Hmm.
then there's a lag time, especially if we want them to read a physical book because we need them a week to send it, 2 weeks for them to read it, and then the interview. So some people will say, I'm good with a digital book, and you can really schedule them in the next 2 weeks. So things just spread out. And when we do it, we literally book anywhere from 3 to 5 months worth of interviews. So you really don't have to do it. In the old days, when you did a media tour with broadcast radio, you did them all in 2 days. Here, they
Yeah.
spread out so that you're not overwhelmed. You can put
Hmm.
them into your schedule when it makes sense for you. And you're accommodating those that are live, but also a lot of them are recorded and they can work on your schedule. Now, if you're going to do this on your own, then you need to write a really compelling pitch letter that gets them to say yes, or a podcast introductory sheet that explains what you're going to speak on and why you. And so you send that to the host. You frequently have to follow up because they don't always answer on the first one.
True.
And then if they do, then you need to be responsive immediately and start the booking process, getting them the media kit, and lining up your interviews. The first thing I would say is hit your low hanging fruit first. Those people
Hmm.
that are in your community, in your specialty, people that you know, not the highest ones on the food chain. They are the hardest to book. If you try to get on the big shows right away, one of two things will happen. Either you won't get on and you'll get discouraged because they are the hardest ones to book, or you might get on. And if you're not really fully camera ready, that can be a disaster and it'll prevent you from getting other interviews as well. And you've lost an opportunity at the highest level. So start in the lower, middle, and the middle areas. If you're looking at, Spotify and Apple, and you can see what the shows are in your genre, so that you have a better chance of getting on, the better chance of perfecting your delivery, and then you go after the big stuff.
That makes sense. And, because a lot of people like our authors, they don't have experience on podcast and being interviewed. That's why we include in our package that they get on our podcast. So then, like, okay, now you have an asset. Now you've created a podcast. We're giving you the transcript. You've got video, you've got clips. So now you can say, yes, I've done the interview, and they get their feet wet in it. So this is a question we get all the time. And a lot of authors, they vacillate, and even I have vacillated. It's like, when should they start? All right, you're going to launch a book. So let's say an author comes to us, they already have their manuscript. And so we're going to start the publishing process 3 to 6 months, depending on what they're doing with their book. And I always felt like they should start inquiring about getting on podcast once we have the book cover, right? They have the formatted book and we have the book cover. They should start pitching podcasts because, like you say, it takes 3 months to get all of that going and all that. And if you want to have it coordinate with your book launch, you got to start doing that ahead of time, maybe even before then. I mean, like ideally, it'd be like even before they have the book cover, but they have the book content done. So they can start to, hey, this is my background, this is my bio, here are my headshots, all that stuff. You can start doing all of that while we're working on the publishing part. So then they're actually booking podcasts during the book launch. What is your opinion on that? Or is it okay to wait and do it post-launch?
Well, you can do it before launch, but you have to have a digital copy ready to go so that they can
Mm-hmm.
easily read the book. But I personally like to prefer having something where we already have the physical copies of the books, because
Mm-hmm.
there's still 30% of these hosts that want a physical copy of the book. And they're going to
Gotcha.
delay you until they have a physical copy of the book. So we just generally wait to, at least even if it's not a pub date, but you can get copies, or readers copies, and you happen to have a physical copy of the book. We want to be able to give the hosts that want a physical copy of book the physical book. But you can be booking before the public can get those books. Just don't do
Yeah.
your interviews until the books are available, because hosts really don't like it. And you're doing a pre-launch, and they're telling their audience about it, and the audience can't get the book for 2 months.
Yeah, so the podcast has to air when the book is already launched. So they can and cuz time-wise for that, and I get that. So I know, and so many authors, especially with traditional publishers, they're doing pre-orders. That's kind of their standard now, is they do a pre-order for 6, 8 months, even a year on some of these people, and then they'll give out X amount of audio samples of the book and X amount of the digital of some of the rough draft of the manuscript. But then I do see, like recently we worked with a high level person and a big PR company, and it was with a traditional publishing house. And then the big push was during that time, but they had some of the stuff scheduled based on when the book was going to be released. So they were already getting on, Kevin Hart or different really named people's things, but you have to book those way in advance. So it's really kind of an art to get everything scheduled and coming in together at the same time.
So essentially, you're building your media kit and your pitches and all the things you're going to use to be getting those interviews well in advance. And so once
Hmm.
the book is really available, either in a digital or, a physical form, then you're full speed ahead.
Yeah, that's important for all the timing. So tell us, you're working on some exciting things now. You've kind of transitioned into doing something new and creative. I love that you never sit still, Jackie. You're always doing something new.
Thank you. So one of my passion is historic novels and historic travel, going to places where history is very evident, and taking photographs. So I'm going to combine that into a blog called The Historic Traveler, where you're going to be seeing my photos of historic localities, and I'm going to recommend the books that are going to make that come alive for you. And then there's a whole bunch of other things that we're going to provide: the world's largest list of historic hotels, the first directory of historic novels, history books, and historic mysteries by region and country, a book club, all kinds of cool things. So people can go to historic travel, thehistorictraveler.com, and sign up to be notified when we launch. I'm very excited about this because it's a project of my heart. It's still about books and reading. So my life is all about books, whether I'm promoting them for people or whether I'm giving you the keys to keep your fantasies, alive in living in the different times. So
I love that. My very first book was I had a villa, which I still do, down in the Dominican Republic. And I was like, I didn't have a business at the time. I didn't know I should write a book about. So I would rent the villa out. So I wrote a book about the best restaurants and places to visit when you're in the Dominican Republic. And that was 11 years ago. And I still get book sales on that book. I'm sure it's totally outdated, right? It's 11 years old. Yeah, and I still get book sales. So travel is a great niche. I'm so excited for you. Can't wait to see what's going to happen with that. Thank you for all this terrific information, everyone. We're going to have a transcript of this if you want to look at the transcript so you can highlight even all these great things that Jackie said. I know I'm going to want to go back and look at the transcript and say, all right, highlight this, highlight that, make sure we use this. And these are great author tips for everybody. So and join us if you're thinking about writing a book or looking for advice, if you need to relaunch your book to become a bestseller, if you need to get book awards and you need social media or an email marketing campaign, we do all of that. We have everything under our umbrella from start to finish, nuts to bolts for authors, and we're very concierge level service. So if you'd like to become part of our family, reach out to us at eliteonlinepublishing.com and look up the rest of our videos. We have got tons of great content. We'll see you next time, everyone. Have a great week.
If you want to write a book and become a best-selling author, you're in the right place. At Elite Online Publishing, we can help you create, publish, and market your book so that it becomes a #1 bestseller. We work with a limited number of authors to ensure that they receive the best possible service. So if you want to learn how to write and publish a book that will empower you to smartly grow your brand, business, and credibility, apply today. We look forward to working with you.